Hi, this is Matt. I've on my third attempt of recording this little session. It's so much easier to do it live, believe it or not. First problem I had, I got about an hour in and then I had two teenage daughters arguing over a pair of leggings. The language certainly wasn't suitable, but your ears, my ears, certainly not under my roof anyway, but it messed up my recording. And then yesterday I had a second attempt and I thought I'd put a little bit of mood music in the background. It sounded absolutely fine while I was recording it, but when I uploaded it to the system you couldn't hear me. Now might be a good thing, I don't know, but apologies for that. Thanks for Kelly and Kim for quickly letting me know so I could do something about it. It was a head in hands moment, but hopefully third time lucky. I've got myself up nice and early. I'm in a Skype meeting with Charles shortly, but I'm going to try and get as much of this video done and may do it in two parts, see how we get on. Okay, so hope everyone's feeling okay. It's a worrying time, but most important thing is looking after yourself, friends and family. What I'd like you to do is get yourself a brew, a notepad and pen. I'll go through the slides best I can, try and add a little bit of input. It's so much better having a little bit of experience and a little bit of context rather than just reading the slides itself. So we'll make a start. So if you remember last week we discussed what management is, or what we think it is. There's a lot of interpretations of management out there, depending on what you read. There's whole degrees on management. So as you know, it's a big subject and very important when we're managing projects. We considered what good management might look like. We looked at different descriptions, interpretations of what a good manager is. We looked at I found this a little bit quite uncomfortable to do this because it's looking at yourself sort of from the outside. So we explored ourselves in terms of attributes, how we see ourselves and how others might perceive us. Apologies if that made you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's one of them, we're our own worst critics sometimes, and it's sometimes good just to take a step back and look at yourself from the outside and try and be honest and look at ways that we can, how we're seen to people and how we can improve ourselves, which is something we do throughout our human lives. And the last thing we did was we introduced some thoughts on how we might become better or more effective at managing others. So that's kind of what we did last week, and this is the second part of a two-part session. Just to let you know, I've started marking assignment 1, so far so good. I'm not going to worry about assignment 2 until next week. Obviously we're in a unique position at the moment where we don't know where we're going assessment wise. Also it's a group assignment, which makes it very difficult and a whole host of new challenges, so bear with me on that one. Okay, so this week, as I just said, it's managing others, so it's part 2 of the 2 sessions on managing self and others. And what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce some principles of effective management, consider alternative approaches and discussions, explore self-development ideas that may be able to improve our personal management capabilities, and we're going to revisit some ideas on motivation. And I do believe you've done a module previously at level 4 on motivation, so it's a little recap for you on that one. Okay, so it's difficult, I think, watching videos, especially long ones, but sometimes people find it difficult in lectures as well. But what I advise you to do is have a drink close by, a brew, have a notepad and pen there, and hit the pause button periodically. If it means go and stretch your legs, go and get a drink. But just keep with it. There's not an awful lot for you to do in this session. It's more a case of just collating the information, what you feel is relevant, taking any points of interest, and these are the things you can take away from these sessions and potentially implement in other modules or in any assignments, etc. So as you know, my background is computing. And I do like Steve Jobs, or I like listening to some of his, or reading some of his quotes, and found this one. I always like to find a quote before the start of a lecture, and management is about persuading people to do things they do not want to do, while leadership is about inspiring people to do things they never thought they could. So Steve Jobs used to do large keynote presentations to the Apple team, usually announcing a new product, and the iPhone was launched, the iPod thing. And he always started his keynotes with a a meaningful philosophical look on the world, and this was one of them in particular that Steve had. So first thing I want you to do, I'm going to get you to do a little bit of writing just to start off with, but I want you to take a couple of minutes, and basically what I want you to think about is, what does good management look like? Okay, so have a little think, jot down a few words that spring to mind. Unfortunately, I can't accept Menti up, so you can't do it remotely on a phone, but just on a scrap of paper or your notepad, what does good management look like? Secondly, what makes a good manager? And thirdly, when thinking about good managers, who springs to mind? Why? Ask yourself why. Put a point next to it, why. I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds to have a think about that one. Okay, that should do. Start with the third question, great managers. When you think of great managers, who springs to mind? And I kind of just plucked them out of the air as I was thinking while I was collating these slides. And there's a big discussion in football at the minute about which Premier League manager is the greatest. And Jurgen Klopp, arguably at Liverpool, is doing a fantastic job. Pep Guardiola has been successful in every managerial position that he's been in. He has a knack of getting the best out of his players. Yes, he has money as well, which does help, but sometimes money doesn't buy you love, as I say, as the famous Beatles song says. You know, what are they doing that makes those players perform week in, week out consistently? So Winston Churchill, I've just got into reading audiobooks, or listening to audiobooks, I get it right, Matt. And often when I'm walking the dog, I stick my headphones in and I'm listening to various different books, and I listen to things that I would never go and buy in a bookshop. And one of the things I am listening to at the minute is a book on Sir Winston Churchill and the War Cabinet. So similar to what we're in a situation now with our current government, a national crisis. They have to make awkward decisions and important decisions. They have to communicate effectively. And I think Sir Winston Churchill, he has his arguments, critics should I say, but at the time when the country needed a leader, you know, in the darkest hour, he and his cabinet and team of advisors, you know, managed the country. And I can't not mention Ian Evatt at Barrow as well. I think he's doing a fantastic job on a very low shoestring budget, young players, and he's getting these players playing to the best of their ability, interacting with the community, and you know, making a difference in a town, not just at the football club. And you probably can relate to this. Is this someone at work that you can think about as a good manager? Someone that's been there for you, supported you either your development or supported you in a personal crisis? I can name 2 or 3 really good managers in my career that not only have helped me develop professionally, but they've also been there for me, you know, to put an arm around me when I needed one, and 1 or 2 as well that actually, you know, give me a kick up the backside when I needed it, which helped me become a better professional. So can you relate to somebody like that from your workplace? Okay, so this slide is off a website called Mind Tools. Now, when I was doing my master's degree, I used the Mind Tools website quite regularly. It's a really good professional resource for information on project management, leadership, motivation theories. It's pretty much everything to do with business, and they have some fantastic graphics, mini papers, blogs. Just as a substitute to possibly going down the academic route with Google Scholar and things, it's just nice to sometimes just look at other things, and usually they link to professional documents. And I like this one. When I was just having a little look in Mind Tools, I found this graphic that talks about sort of 10 attributes or skills that a good manager has, and hopefully if you look at them you probably can relate to some of them and agree with them. So for example, actively listens to their team, is honest, communicates openly, is approachable, is fair or impartial, they trust the team, is understanding, is knowledgeable, helps their team, recognises the team's achievements. And I quite like that. I mean, there's 100 more, and I'm sure on the notes as you were scribbling down, you probably got a few of these and one or two other permutations of them. But you know, good managers should have those sort of things, in my opinion. Okay, so what does good management look like? So there is no clear definition of what good management is or how it can be implemented. As you're quite aware, I'm sure, there's lots of journals, articles, publications, books, website blogs, etc. on the subject. But what has come out from all of this literature is that there is no one size fits all. You know, what works well for one manager in one situation may not work in another due to sort of many different variables, and some of these variables are listed below. So things like people and their personalities, skills and characteristics, organisations, culture, structure, the history of the organisation, access to resources, etc. Problems that need solving, new or well understood issues. So when you do your risk register, you look at possible issues and risks and mitigation. Sometimes they're not on your risk register, they just come out of the blue and you have to solve them. And there's internal and external factors, and as you know in the news now and the state that nations found themselves, there's external factors. We could not predict that there'd be a flu or COVID-19 pandemic that's going to make people very unwell. It's going to close schools, colleges, universities, businesses are going to struggle. Lots and lots of external factors that sometimes happen. Internally, you could have a company merger, you could have industrial action, things like that. So a good manager has to be able to deal with all those different situations. So a lot of research is very specific, which is about dealing with situations that isolate most of the above variables. So sometimes they're a bit generic about how to be a good manager, but a good manager needs to be able to adapt to different situations. And working in project management, it's all about responding to change, adapting to different circumstances. No project is the ideal world. When you create your plan at the start, it's very unlikely that it's going to follow the plan exactly. Sometimes you get lucky, but on most occasions something goes wrong or something needs tweaking as you go along. So in the context of your studies, obviously you have project management apprentices. Hopefully by the end of your apprenticeship you'll move into project management positions within your organisation, or some of you may feel you want to move on and do something else, but either way, having management awareness, that emotional intelligence, will help you become a better professional. So, as I said on the previous slide, projects in their very nature include changing organisational situations and problem domains, so we cannot always rely on tried and tested techniques. We must therefore look at general people-focused aspects of management. And people and getting them to do what you want and when you want it is the key aspect of project management. And this could be considered as leadership and management depending upon the context. So apologies for the cheesy thumbs up character, but improving your own capabilities. Last week we introduced some ways in which we might improve our own general skills as a manager. Identifying how good a manager you are or feel you are, and obviously it's difficult for yourselves because you're in an early career. You may not be managing many people, but you may get to manage tasks and projects and collaborate and work with people. Identify what good or better managers do, and I always feel learn from experience. I like to think in my practice in my managerial capabilities. I try to take snippets of what I've experienced, good management that I've seen, and also counter it as well, the managers that I've worked for that haven't been as good. Why weren't they so good? Reflect and be mature and take the good and bad and implement them into your own practice. And understand why it's difficult to be a good manager. There's no such thing as a perfect manager. It'd be nice if every manager was perfect and every problem was solvable very quickly without any stress and conflict. But just having that awareness just helps you become a better professional. Okay, so what do you think that is managing? So organisations make different demands on managers in different situations. Managers must be able to understand the organisational situation to know what the best or most appropriate course of action is. So exactly what we're going through in the country at the moment. You know, it's uncertain, lots of worry. Managers need to make the right choices, make the right decisions. So in like in a recession, and there's, you know, the potential that the country could go into a recession depending on how long this situation presents itself. So managers, organisations will have to make the key decisions. So in recession, survival of the organisation is the key focus. Short-term planning, high levels of financial control. There's also maintenance management for the more normal periods operation. You know, keeping the place running, keeping things operational, continually improving, for example. And then you've got your development management, you know, your new ideas, your innovation, a way of keeping your company going in the future. And you could also relate to rail track, or the private organisations that run the rail, for example. Not many people in this current situation will be using public transport, so trains are likely to take a pinch financially. So the management need to make sure that they manage the short term, making sure that, you know, the employers are safe and also getting paid, you know, while they're isolating or those services running. The maintenance management is your day-to-day business as usual, making sure that those trains are maintained and they're running on time and staff are trained, and you're looking at being more efficient each time. And your development management might be a future train. You know, you're going to, the particular model of train that's running on those tracks is coming to the end of its life. What new technology are you going to implement? Or is it a new computer system to allow your customers to book tickets online rather than having to go to a ticket booth? You know, things like that. So you should constantly be looking at change in different situations. And looking at those three areas, do these management activities have the same set of skills and requirements? Just have a think about that for a second. So it's about being effective. Apologies, my voice is very croaky today. I feel okay, so don't worry. But when you record yourself, it's quite tricky because you don't get the same breaths. So being effective. Now we refer a lot to Nicholson's article about effective management. So in 1992, Nicholson argues that to be an effective manager, you must be good in all three of those situations that we just talked about. So survival is essential, but only so that you can leave something to be maintained. Maintenance is useful, but only as a prelude to development. And development is good, but must be supported by periods of consolidation, i.e. maintenance, and must not be putting the survival of the organisation at unjustified risk. And that's kind of what happens with Apple in the early days in the 80s. Steve Jobs was a development, it was his own company that he set up in his garage with Steve Wozniak. They finally got onto the stock market. They had other board members working for the company. Steve was in charge of developments, and he was spending thousands, millions on developing the Apple Lisa and the Apple Macintosh at the expense of the company's profits, and the company wasn't selling enough of its Apple II computers to compensate the losses that they were making on his development. And in the end, the board actually made a very brave decision and actually sent Steve packing. As a result, Apple managed to survive a little bit longer than they were anticipating. It's interesting that it did a full 360 in the end, because they then struggled with the innovation, and in the end Steve Jobs came back and rescued the company further down the line. But at the time, the development was more the focus rather than making sure that what they had and the systems and processes that they had in place were effective. So all of the above must take place while also managing yourself. So as a manager, your health, your mental well-being, your stress levels, also your team's well-being and stress levels, etc. Maintaining your skill set, making sure that you are up to date with the latest skills, you're continually improving and developing yourself, and your self-understanding. You know, where do you want to be? Do you want to be the manager in this department for the rest of your career? Some people are happy just doing that, other people are more ambitious and they want to go as far as they possibly can, and possibly, you know, travel and work in other organisations, not just being one organisation for the whole career. They want to experience different places. So Nicholson has identified 4 areas of activity that managers commonly encounter. So one of them is the planning and administration, problem solving, leadership, and general people management. You know, looking after the people that work within your team. And he identified some common excuses and offers some words of advice. Now, I want you to take a moment and look at these and kind of relate, see if you can relate to them. So, how might you deal with this situation? And how would you react as the manager being informed of this? So, put yourself as the person in the situation, and then think about if you were the manager and you were informed that one of your workers was feeling like this, how might you react? So the first one, clearly observation, and I know Kim tells me off for having lots of pictures, but we're going to do a little bit of observation. We can see somebody here, pile of work on the right, it's 10 to 6, I'm assuming that's 10 to 6 in the evening, it could be 10 to 6 in the morning. This person doesn't look very happy, and they've said, if only I had a little more time or less to do. So it's almost implying that they feel a little bit stressed, a lot of work on, and struggling to cope a little bit. So how would you feel in that situation? What would your response be? Would you say something like that? And if you were the manager, how would you feel if you knew one of your workers was feeling like this? And Nicholson says, time is something you create for yourself by managing your workload. Better planning, more delegation, saying no, asking for help can all create more time. It's not always that simple, mind. So you're responsible for your own time management, and if you are struggling with your workload, either you need to learn to plan better. You know, maybe your structure and the way you go about your work isn't efficient. Maybe you need to delegate more, rather than take it all on yourself. Trust your colleagues and delegate. Say no, very difficult to do in the workplace. I'm guilty of this. One person actually said to me once, "You're a bit of a yes man, Matt," and I thought, you know, I found that quite offensive when they said it, but in my mind it was a case of I want to do well, I want to get on, I want to impress. I didn't want to say no, and I didn't want to come across as confrontational or awkward. But as I've got older and matured a little bit, it's about saying no when it's appropriate and how you say no. You don't just, your boss says, "Can you do this?" and you just go no. You say, "Well, I really like to do it and help, but at the moment I've got these other priorities and I'm really snowed under at the moment. Is there anything you could suggest I don't do if you want me to do this?" It's that sort of beauty of hindsight. But one thing that we need to do is ask for help when we need to. And I see that in the classroom as a teacher. Some students are too scared to put their hand up and ask a daft question because they're scared of being embarrassed. Other students bombard you with help, asking for help, so they go to the other extreme. But I always say there's no such thing as a daft question, and as a manager I would be mortified if one of my colleagues was struggling and stressed and I knew nothing about it, and because, you know, I'd always happily try and help them and ease the load no matter how busy I was. So another scenario here. If only I didn't have my boss on my back all the time. So can you relate to this? I certainly have had experience of managers, more than one, constantly on my back, bordering on bullying. And you hear about workplace bullying, and you know, people saying things that are inappropriate and upsetting people, causing work-related stress, causes sickness, and also in some cases causes that person to leave the organisation. How would you respond if your boss was constantly on your back? You know, the right answer would be to be mature and professional about it. Sometimes, you know, people do bite back. So, looking at Nicholson, he said it's most likely that your own boss would not want to be on your back either. So what you need to do is reassure them that you do not need constant attention, and suggests that you could do a much better job if you're allowed to get on with it, is one of Nicholson's suggestions. The key here is not to be aggressive back. You know, if they are constantly on your back, there is policies in there to protect workers. You go to HR, you escalate it, but more often than not, you just need a bit of a conversation with that person to discuss why you're particularly struggling. Now, in some cases, you might not be performing to your duties, and your boss has lost patience. But a good manager shouldn't just react aggressively. They should be professional, follow the policies, and counsel it properly. Another one, if only I could trust my staff to do more. So in this case, the manager won't let go by the looks of things. It's almost as if they can't empower their team. And the simple question is, you can. You should trust and empower them. And like I say, I worked previously in a previous role with the Agile Consortium, so, you know, the Agile Project Management Movement. My master's degree was in Agile Leadership, and empowerment is a big part of being Agile, and that's trusting and allowing your employees, trainees, team members to do the same job, or the job that's expected of them. So you may have selected them or trained them, and it's entirely up to you how you utilise them. So rather than you do it all yourself, trust your colleagues to pull their weight and do their bit. And that was something I struggled with early in my career. I was too afraid to give other people tasks because I didn't feel that they would do it as well as I did. But as a result, I took on too much, and in the end I needed to let go and delegate and empower, train them, show them, mentor them through exactly what I was expecting, and then obviously deal with it if they don't, but give people some trust. And that leads me to that question on what is empowerment. I've kind of already answered it for you. So empowerment, I think, in the project management world is a very useful and a powerful leadership approach. So the Agile Consortium brought out a new set of guidelines in 2014. It's the Agile Project Framework. Initially it was DSDM. You may have heard of DSDM. And DSDM was predominantly for government organisations for software development. So when they were producing software, large information systems for like the county council, schools, colleges, various other services, the NHS were an example. The new framework isn't just about software projects, it's about all projects. It's quite high level. So one of their discussions or their quotes is, the authority and permission to act is what empowerment is. To empower your team, therefore, is to free them to do their job unencumbered. Of course, there are some boundaries and restrictions, but they should be applied conservatively to keep the tasks on track without stifling productivity. And it also goes on to say, empowerment leads to a culture of shared responsibility where everyone is working towards a common goal. When they're empowered, team members are often inspired to bring forward new ideas and solutions. This is a strong opposition to the old top-down management style. So the old top-down management, very autocratic, someone at the top of the management structure telling everybody what they have to do, regardless of whether there's a better ways to do it or whether team members had ideas themselves. The Agile world, it's almost flipped slightly, and you empower your teams to take a shared responsibility, a shared ownership, and bring ideas. And what's the Agile Consortium believe is that it makes people feel valued, feels part of the bigger picture. There's a bigger buy-in to the vision of the project or the organisation, and generally you get better results. So my master's degree kind of covered all these sort of features, and I'm quite passionate about agility and giving people that empowerment. Okay, so from Mind Tools, as I touched on earlier, how to empower your team. And it talks about, on the left hand side, from a team, give them shared responsibility, give them some interdependence, give them some decision making power, and work towards a common goal. Now it's difficult with the decision making because some stakeholders in projects will not want decisions being made without their input or they're having the final say. So in the ad, there's a lot of papers that are discussing how do you make agile work in that type of context. And it's difficult, but you've got to kind of sort of allow certain decisions to be made collectively, and give the main decision maker, executive level, all the information so that they can make the correct decision. So there is sort of a little bit of crossover that I've come across in literature, but I still feel empowerment is a very useful tool. And from a management perspective, as I just said, get input, ask for ideas, opportunity to give positive feedback, become constructive, stretch their responsibilities, and act as a mentor. So rather than you dictating to people, you facilitate and you mentor your teams to work collectively. And there's an activity, I'm not sure whether Rob might have used this one with you, he stole it from me a couple of years ago. It's called Lost at Sea, and basically you get given a scenario where you are on a boat that's sinking at sea, and you've got 10 items that you can take onto the rubber dinghy as the ship goes down that will help you survive. And what you've got to do is rank them in order. So you go through the list of items and you rank them 1 to 10. You then do it with your group and discuss, collaborate, justify your reasons. You usually find that the order changes somewhat, and then what you do is you compare the answer that the lifeguard, the Coast Guard generated from their experience. And normally what you do is you compare the scores between your score and the Coast Guard and the group score. Normally what you find is the group collective score is better, and the purpose of the activity is to show that working as a collective whole is so much better than the individual. There's no I in team, as the saying goes. So it's often a useful activity to show. If you've not done it before, let me know, and we maybe get fitted in before we finish. We can even do it remotely in one of our sessions. Okay, so what do good managers do? Nicholson 92 focuses on people management and lists 4 characteristics that good managers tend to share. So they take enormous pleasure and pride in their growth of their staff. Now I think that's important. I discuss this with my wife quite regularly in her position in the NHS. I'm sure she won't mind me discussing her. I'll do it with my current wife rather than ex-wife for a change. So she manages a very large team within the local NHS trust. She's between Kendal, Lancaster and Barrow. A lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, and bless her, this morning she was off and out up to the hospital because she's involved in the strategic decisions with what's going on. But what she often has is one-to-ones with her team members, and she'll say, oh, looks like so-and-so's applying for another job. I'm pleased for her, to be honest, and I often think about it and thinking, well, from a management's perspective, it's very inconvenient when a member of your staff leaves, because you potentially might lose someone that's really skilled, and then you have the issue with obviously filling that role while you're recruiting for someone else, and there's no guarantee that you'll get someone as good. And it almost ties in a little bit with Tuckman's theory at that adjourning stage, where you lose somebody really good. But a good manager should be pushing their employees, and we talked about CPD a couple of weeks ago. You're pushing them staff to be the best they can be, and encourage them to apply for promotions and move on. And yes, it might be a short inconvenience, but look at it from yourself that you're encouraging your team to be the best they can be. And a good manager should be proud of that. If you can take people to the next level, that's always a good thing. Okay, they have to be cheerful optimists, able to keep morale up in difficult situations. So when the chips are down, if your manager is positive and upbeat and enthusiastic, it's so much better and easier for your team to believe in it. If your manager is cursing senior manager, coming in late, not really looking interested, then you could argue that if your manager's not optimistic, why should you be? So these are important. Don't overpromise, particularly in project management. It's very important, particularly when you're planning, scheduling. Give them the information that's right, correctly planned. Don't promise anything. Be honest and stick to the information. Don't say, oh yeah, we'll have it done by Friday, when you know there's a likelihood that you won't get it done by Friday. Because after so many of these, you lose that credibility and people won't trust you the same. And when they move on from a job, they always leave the situation a little better than it was when they arrived. So I'd like to think in my positions, when I started and when I've left, the job is in a better place than it was when I started. And good managers do that. And even if they move on to becoming senior managers, you'd like to think that they've moved that position or evolved that position in a better place. And these are general characteristics. So what about activities that a good manager should undertake? So these are characteristics. What about things they actually do as good managers? Now, I wasn't sure how to take this slide out, but Richard Branson, this quote ties in with what I was talking about with my wife, is that train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And this is a famous quote from Sir Richard Branson. However, and I don't know how true it is, there's so much press at the moment with what the current situation in the world. One of the articles was that Virgin have laid off all their staff until this crisis averts, because Richard Branson's profit margins are going to drop and he's asking the government to bail him out. He's a multi-billionaire and there's people at the other end of the scale that are really going to struggle, and we don't know how true it is. Again, you know what the newspapers are like, but we'll just concentrate on the quote itself. I do like that. Train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. It's quite a nice quote, but I think we'll just ignore the context of the situation. I noticed on Twitter that it was trending a few days ago next to Piers Morgan, so it's difficult being in the spotlight sometimes, and if they say the wrong thing, then people can certainly misinterpret. Okay, so what do good managers do? Okay, so we'll have a quick look now. We're going to good managers select and retain good staff, which I just talked about. Keep good staff and attract new staff by creating an environment that people want to join and not leave. Or if they do leave, they leave on for better things, and the new person can come in and obviously have a good experience. Keep staff well informed. And we know in project management, communication or ineffective communication is a reason why some projects fail. So effective communication is essential. People need to know where they fit in the bigger picture, why their role is important. Help them improve. This is where we talk about CPD. Be a good role model. Practice what you preach. Show them good ways, good working techniques. You should have the experience of doing their job, and hopefully you can pass on that knowledge. So most people want to do a good job. It's only very rare occasions that people do sloppy work on purpose. So it might not be possible to change the job people do, but it may be possible to change or adjust how they do it. It also keeps them motivated, new ways of working. Know how to negotiate. Now, one whole module on my master's degree was on negotiation. Saying the right things, trying to reach a common ground with people. You need good negotiation skills, up and down the management tree, whether you're at director level or whether you're a middle manager, making sure that you can do trade-offs, look for win-win situations, win-lose. It depends on the circumstances, but do your homework, do your research, get the information you require before you make those decisions. Massive one, and I've been reading some dissertation proposals. One or two of them are on conflict or handling conflict constructively. Again, conflict is inevitable. People have their own views, their own attitudes. Conflict must be managed appropriately and using the appropriate channels and policies as well. There's a lot of work on transactional analysis, attribution theory, lots and lots of different conflict models that you can use to help you with that. It's a little big chunk of it in the APM, especially on the APMP. There's a section on conflict, and managers need to be able to deal with conflict. It's massively important. Managers have to make decisions, even if it's not particularly popular, and sometimes a decision not to make a decision is important as well. But what you've got to try and do is ensure that you've got the right information and to make those decisions. Lead by example. I like to sometimes in my management is I would never ask somebody to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. So it's good to lead by example. Give clear messages, practice what you preach is the heart of effective management. Credibility and consistency. So have you been in a situation where someone's gone, oh, he's useless or she's useless, I don't know, they're a manager. So if you are that person in that position, you could show them how you want them to manage, and you can also show them that you can do the job as well and show your competency, which gives you that bit of credibility as well. So what impact do large pay rises for senior managers have on shop floor workers who get little or no reward? Which is quite controversial sometimes when people, I remember a company I worked at, they were laying people up on the shop floor and all the directors got new company cars, and it was a little bit insensitive, even though the cars were budgeted, they were on a finance lease I think at the time, but the shop floors that were given 90 days notice that they were going to lose their jobs, and then managers are turning up in brand new Jaguars. It was a little bit of a sucker blow, to be honest, for one or two of them. Same if you get a pay rise and they don't, or you're earning a lot more money than they are, what are you doing that justifies that? You've got to take calculated risks. Most of the decisions will involve risk. Steps should be taken to recognise and manage these, but not trying to completely avoid any risk. Not making a decision also involves risk. Encourage new ways of working. Staff need to develop or be developed, encouraged to acquire new skills, thinking and attitudes. Where these are effective, they should be rolled out across the team. It's not a case of that you go on a computer course and learn something. Really, you should encourage that person then to share what they've done on their training to improve everybody's skills and experience. And talks about create an atmosphere where experimentation and failure is acceptable within reason. So Agile again is about failing fast, learning from failure. So if you do fail, why did you fail? Let's not do it again, let's learn from it. And the final one is to solve and learn from problems, which again ties in what I've just said. Not all problems are solvable by you and your team. You might have to identify people or resources that are needed to solve the specific problem. Also try to identify the source of the problem to prevent the problems reoccurring. So lessons learned, as we talk about, is big in project management, but also if something can't be done, so I'm going to use computing for example, let's say there's a particular feature of an app that I'm building and I cannot, and my team members can't do it, I need to make a decision to go down the supply chain perhaps and find someone that can. Okay, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going into another meeting now, so I'm going to pause this now. I'm going to split this video into two parts, so by all means go and grab yourself a brew if you haven't already got one in front of you, and then please move on to the next video, which is going to discuss about great managers. See you soon.